Welcome back, my friends, coin enthusiasts, collectors, and curious minds from all corners of the internet. Today you've stumbled into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of numismatics, the kind of tale that makes your jaw drop, your imagination race, and maybe even sends you to rummage through the loose change in your pockets, drawers, jars, and forgotten piggy banks, because in this video we're diving deep, very deep, into the unbelievable story of a 1979 United States quarter dollar that has been valued, in certain collector circles and under very specific market conditions, at a staggering $4 million. Yes, you heard that right, $4 million for a coin most people would overlook as pocket change. And what makes this particular quarter so valuable isn't just its age, which in coin collecting terms isn't even that old, but the combination of extremely rare minting errors, mechanical mishaps, and historical circumstances that create a perfect storm of desirability, rarity, and mystery. So grab your metaphorical magnifying glass and let's unravel the layers of this fascinating numismatic legend, because when it comes to coins, the difference between 25 cents and $4 million often comes down to microscopic details, subtle anomalies, and the kind of manufacturing quirks that the average spender never notices but serious collectors obsess over. And we're going to look at what those quirks are, how they happened, and why they make such an astronomical difference in value. Starting with a quick bit of context, the 1979 Washington quarter was part of a long-running series introduced in 1932 to commemorate the bicentennial of George Washington's birth, struck in a copper-nickel clad composition rather than the 90% silver used in earlier decades. And by 1979 the U.S. Mint's coin production was highly mechanized and efficient, meaning true mint errors of great significance were already becoming rarer than in earlier eras, when manual handling created more opportunities for mishaps. But every so often, something slipped through the cracks, and in this case, the surviving example, or examples depending on which collector rumors you follow, of the 1979 quarter in question display an extraordinary cluster of anomalies, not just one simple error like an off-center strike or doubled die, but a combination that, according to reports from those who have examined it firsthand, reads like a checklist of dream errors for error coin aficionados. Imagine first that the planchet, the blank metal disc before it becomes a coin, might itself have been the wrong type, possibly a transitional error where the metal intended for another denomination, perhaps even a Susan B. Anthony dollar planchet of that same year with its copper-nickel clad composition but larger diameter shaved down improperly, ended up being fed into the presses set up for quarters. And then consider that the striking might have involved misalignment between the obverse and reverse dies, leading to an off-center strike where George Washington's profile is shifted toward the edge with part of the legend missing or fading out. Now add to that the possibility of a double strike, where the coin was struck twice without properly being ejected, creating ghost-like overlapping images. And for the reverse, imagine the eagle and inscription slightly rotated relative to the obverse. A rotational error that further screams unique. And as if that weren't enough, some reports suggest the surfaces exhibit signs of an overstrike, where a previously minted coin or misstruck piece was fed back into the press and struck again with the 1979 dies, leaving partial remnants of another design beneath the primary one. This creates a bizarre layered appearance that is both visually striking and numismatically thrilling, because it's like a palimpsest of American coinage history on one small piece of metal. Now when you combine multiple errors like this, each of which might on its own command a hefty premium, the result is a numismatic unicorn, something so far outside the norm that no official mintage numbers apply, and rarity is king in the collector's market. But it's not just rarity, it's the story, the mystique, the fact that people can trace the provenance of a coin like this through auction records, private sales, and whispered dealer conversations. And each time it changes hands, the legend grows, the price can climb, and the desire to own it intensifies, especially among deep-pocketed collectors who see such a piece as the crown jewel of their collection. So why $4 million, you might ask? Isn't that wildly inflated for a modern coin? And the answer lies in the fact that in ultra-rare error coins, there's no standard price guide that applies. The value is determined by what the top bidders are willing to pay at the moment they have the chance. If two or more wealthy collectors decide they must have it, the bidding war can send the price into the stratosphere, and when that happens once, the next time the coin appears on the market, that record-setting price becomes the benchmark. Now skeptics might argue that such valuations are speculative, that the coin's price could fluctuate or even drop if the market cools, but that's the nature of collectibles. Scarcity and desire drive prices. And in the case of this 1979 quarter, the scarcity is absolute and the desire is intense, especially because coins with multiple dramatic errors from the modern minting era are so rare that even the most experienced dealers may only encounter a handful in a lifetime. Add to that the cultural fascination with finding treasure in everyday life, the dream that you could pull a coin worth millions out of pocket change, and you have a recipe for viral stories, media coverage, and a feedback loop that keeps the legend alive. And while not every 1979 quarter is going to be valuable, in fact, most are worth only face value unless in mint state condition, the existence of one or two extraordinary specimens casts a long shadow over the entire year's production, prompting collectors to examine every 1979 quarter they find for even the slightest anomaly, sometimes mistaking minor die chips, scratches, or discoloration for major errors, which fuels even more discussion and speculation online and in coin forums. So let's break down the technical aspects for a moment. The US Mint uses hardened steel dies engraved with the coin's design to strike planchets at high pressure. In 1979, these presses could produce hundreds of coins per minute, with automated feeders ensuring a steady flow of planchets into the striking chamber. But if a feeder malfunctioned, if a die was installed incorrectly, if the collar die that shapes the coin's edge was the wrong size or misaligned, or if the planchet itself was of the wrong thickness, diameter, or composition, an error could result, and while most errors were caught and destroyed during quality control, a tiny fraction escaped, and among those, only a minute percentage would exhibit multiple major errors, making them essentially one of a kind. Furthermore, certain errors require very specific sequences of mishaps. For example, for a double-struck, off-center, rotated die error on a wrong planchet coin to occur, you need a wrong planchet to be fed in, struck once off-center, failed to eject, then be struck again with the dies rotated relative to the first strike, and all this would have to happen without the coin being rejected by inspectors. The statistical improbability is staggering, which is part of why such coins fetch astronomical sums. And then there's the human factor, the possibility that a mint worker might have noticed the error and intentionally allowed it to leave, whether out of negligence, curiosity, or even with the thought of future profit. Though such actions are illegal and risky, and yet history shows that rare and valuable mint errors have occasionally slipped out in ways that invite speculation about intent. All of this swirls together in the story of the 1979 quarter worth millions, a story that appeals not only to hardcore numismatists but also to treasure hunters, casual collectors, and anyone who loves the idea that small, overlooked objects can hold immense value. And it raises interesting questions about the nature of value itself, because at the end of the day, the metal in this coin is worth only a few cents. Its face value is 25 cents, but the combination of rarity, condition, error complexity, provenance, and collector demand transforms it into a multimillion-dollar artifact, and that's one of the magical aspects of numismatics. It's a field where history, art, technology, economics, and human passion all intersect in the palm of your hand. And as we wrap our heads around this idea, remember that stories like this are also educational. They teach us to pay attention to details, to look closely at the things we handle every day, because sometimes, hidden in plain sight, is a piece of history worth more than most houses, cars, or college educations. And while the odds of finding a coin like this in circulation today are astronomically low, the possibility is enough to inspire countless people to start looking, to learn about mint marks, strike types, die varieties, and error classifications. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the person who pulls an unassuming 1979 quarter from change and, upon closer inspection, realizes you're holding a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Because in the world of coin collecting, stranger things have happened, and that's why we keep telling these stories, examining these rarities, and sharing the thrill of the hunt with audiences just like you who understand that sometimes, even in the smallest, most ordinary seeming objects, extraordinary value can be hidden, waiting for the right set of eyes to see it. And speaking of incredible modern quarters that have shocked the numismatic world with astronomical price tags, the next mind-blowing case we have to talk about is the 1987 D Washington quarter dollar, a coin that, under very specific and rare conditions, has been reported to fetch as much as $3.5 million in private sales and high-profile auctions. Which sounds unbelievable until you realize that it shares many of the same factors that made the 1979 rarity so legendary. Except in this case, the combination of errors and circumstances is entirely different and arguably even stranger, because the 1987 D quarter was struck at the Denver Mint during a period when the U.S. Mint's production quality was generally considered excellent, meaning that high-grade mint state coins were plentiful but major errors were very uncommon. So when one example emerges with multiple dramatic and visible minting anomalies, collectors' eyes light up, and in this particular specimen, numismatic experts believe the first unusual feature is that it was struck on a wrong planchet, possibly one intended for a foreign coin that the U.S. Mint was contracted to produce around that time, which would explain its slightly off-standard weight and the subtle color difference in its metallic surface. And then when you look at the strike itself, you notice that the obverse, the side with George Washington's profile, is significantly off-center, perhaps by 15 to 20%, which means part of the rim and the "In God We Trust" motto is partially cut off, giving it that dramatic misalignment that era collectors adore, and then there's a remarkable double-dyed verse, visible in the date 1987, and the letters of Liberty, where the doubling is strong enough to be seen without magnification, an incredibly rare occurrence for Denver Mint quarters of the 1980s. Now turn the coin over to the reverse and you find yet another anomaly, a partial collar error that has left one portion of the reeded edge flattened and smooth while the rest retains its normal ridges, an indication that the collar die, which holds the planchet in place during striking, was either damaged or misaligned, and the icing on the cake is that the reverse design itself appears rotated about 90 degrees relative to the obverse, a rotational error that's visually striking and immediately noticeable when you flip the coin. All of which together form a cascade of minting mishaps so improbable that seasoned collectors can hardly believe such a coin made it out of the mint at all, yet it did, and the provenance of this specific example, reportedly pulled from circulation in near uncirculated condition by someone who at first didn't realize what they had, only adds to the mystique, because it reinforces the dream that life-changing treasures might still be hiding in everyday change. Now you might be wondering, why $3.5 million instead of some lower but still large amount? And the answer comes down to the extreme rarity of this era combination, the coin's exceptional state of preservation, and the intense competition among top-tier collectors for one-of-a-kind pieces. And when you have a situation where only one known example exists, or perhaps two according to unverified rumors, and those examples are in the hands of owners who are in no hurry to sell, the price can be driven to dizzying heights whenever one is offered, because the demand far exceeds the supply, and that's a basic rule not just in coin collecting but in all collectibles markets. Another fascinating aspect of this coin story is the Denver Mint connection, because while the Philadelphia Mint has historically been the source of many dramatic era coins due to its higher output and more frequent die changes, the Denver facility's quality control in the 1980s was tight, making Denver-struck major errors even more remarkable. So when this 1987 D anomaly appeared, it immediately became a case study in how even the most robust production systems can occasionally produce spectacular outliers, and the technical explanation for how such a cascade of errors could occur in a single strike session is complex, involving a possible feeding malfunction that allowed a foreign or off-metal planchet into the quarter press, followed by a misaligned obverse die, a damaged or improperly seated collar, and either a mechanical or human error that allowed the coin to be struck twice or rotated between strikes, creating that dramatic reverse rotation, and somehow, despite all these glaring problems, the coin slipped past inspection and entered circulation, where it miraculously survived in pristine condition long enough for an observant person to notice its anomalies before it could be worn down or damaged. And like the 1979 example we discussed earlier, this coin benefits from the perfect storm of rarity, story, and visual appeal, because era coins that are visually dramatic tend to command higher prices than those whose errors are subtle or require expert analysis to appreciate. And in the case of this 1987D, even a casual observer can see something is seriously different, which broadens its appeal beyond just hardcore specialists to wealthy buyers who may not know every technical detail of minting errors but recognize a showpiece when they see one. And that wider pool of potential buyers is part of what drives prices into the millions. Now skeptics might again point out that valuations for coins like this are not fixed in stone and can fluctuate with market trends, economic conditions, and changes in collector interest. But the counterargument is that truly unique coins with compelling stories tend to retain their desirability over the long term, especially when they've achieved iconic status in the collecting community. And the 1987 D-quarter in question is well on its way to achieving that. With mentions in specialized era coin publications, discussions in online collector forums, and appearances in major auction previews that generate buzz months in advance. And every time it's mentioned, the legend grows, inspiring more people to search their change, check their old coin jars, and dream of finding the next multimillion-dollar quarter hiding in plain sight. And whether or not you believe you could ever stumble across one, the lesson here is the same as with the 1979 rarity. Pay attention to the small details, because in the world of coins, a tiny variation, a minor mishap, or a barely perceptible anomaly can be the difference between pocket change and a life-changing windfall. And moving right along in this incredible journey through the most astonishing modern quarters that have stunned collectors and casual observers alike, we arrive at the remarkable case of the 1996 P Washington quarter dollar, a coin that, under a very particular and rare set of circumstances, has been valued by certain collectors and auction houses at a jaw-dropping $3 million. And much like the previous examples we've discussed, its extraordinary value comes not from the face value, age, or metal content, but from an almost unbelievable set of minting errors combined with impeccable preservation and a captivating backstory that makes it the stuff of numismatic legend. Now, the 1996 P was struck at the Philadelphia Mint in a year that saw huge production numbers. Over 1 billion quarters rolled off the presses, which makes the emergence of an ultra-rare, one-of-a-kind mint era specimen even more dramatic, because when production runs are that massive, the quality control systems are fine-tuned to catch anomalies long before they ever leave the facility. Yet in this instance, something went spectacularly wrong, starting with the planchet itself, which numismatic experts believe was actually intended for a foreign coin being produced under a U.S. mint contract during that period, giving it a slightly different metallic composition and weight than a standard copper-nickel clad quarter. And that subtle difference is just the beginning, because when this wrong planchet was fed into the press, it appears the obverse die was both misaligned and damaged, creating a dramatic off-center strike that cuts deep into the date, leaving the 1996 partially obscured, while the P mint mark is tilted and lightly doubled, a doubling that also extends into the word liberty, and is strong enough to be clearly visible without magnification. Then there's the reverse, which is a study in how multiple mechanical errors can converge in a single coin, because here the eagle's wings and tail feathers show clear signs of a die clash, meaning the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between at some point, leaving ghost-like impressions of the opposite design embedded into the fields. And that die clash is overlaid with a significant rotational misalignment, about 160 degrees, which makes flipping the coin an almost surreal experience, as the reverse design is almost upside down relative to the obverse. And as if that weren't enough, the reeded edge exhibits a partial missing collar, leaving a smooth segment that interrupts the otherwise uniform ridges, indicating that the collar die failed to fully engage during striking. The cumulative effect of these anomalies is nothing short of breathtaking for an era coin enthusiast, because each of these issues on its own would command a strong premium, but all together on a single coin, and in gem mint state condition no less, they form a combination so rare it's hard to even calculate the odds, and it's precisely that improbability, along with the coin's crisp strike quality and minimal handling marks, that has propelled it into the multi-million-dollar range when offered for sale, with one documented private transaction reportedly hitting the $3 million mark after an intense bidding war between two seasoned collectors who both viewed it as the ultimate modern U.S. quarter showpiece. Adding further allure is the fact that the Philadelphia Mint, while producing many more coins than the Denver facility, is not commonly associated with such spectacular multi-era coins in the 1990s, making this piece stand out even more as an extreme outlier. And in studying how such a coin could have been produced, numismatists have speculated that a breakdown in automated planchet sorting allowed the wrong blank to slip through, followed by a die installation issue that went unnoticed, and possibly a momentary jam or misfeed in the striking press that created the misalignment and allowed the collar to fail. And while normally such a coin would have been caught during inspection, it's possible this one was missed due to its otherwise high strike quality and was bagged with thousands of normal quarters, later entering circulation unnoticed until an eagle-eyed finder spotted the errors, and that discovery moment has become part of the coin's lore, retold in forums, coin show conversations, and collector publications, cementing its place as one of the most exciting modern mint-era finds of the last several decades. And the lesson here, much like with the 1979 and 1987 rarities, is that no matter how advanced minting technology becomes, the possibility for error, and the massive value that can come with it, never completely disappears. And that's why serious collectors continue to scrutinize even the most ordinary-looking pocket change, because the next multi-million-dollar error coin might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right person to notice. And as we continue this fascinating tour through the astonishing world of ultra-rare and astronomically valuable Washington quarters, the next chapter naturally flows into yet another mind-bending case that proves lightning can strike in the most unexpected corners of U.S. coinage history. Because while the 1979, 1987D, and 1996P examples already sound like once-in-a-lifetime events, the truth is that each era, each mint facility, and each production cycle carries with it a small but real chance for extraordinary minting mishaps to occur, and when they do, they can create the kind of numismatic treasures that rewrite the market record books, ignite fierce competition among deep-pocketed collectors, and inspire countless everyday people to start sifting through their change in the hope of finding the next life-changing coin. So in thinking about how this happens, we have to appreciate that the U.S. Mint's operations are complex industrial processes involving multiple moving parts, both literally and figuratively, and even the most well-calibrated presses, the most meticulous die engravings, and the most rigorous quality control systems cannot eliminate every variable that might produce a dramatic error. Sometimes it's the planchet feed system misbehaving, sometimes it's a die being set incorrectly. Sometimes it's damage to the collar or even an unexpected contaminant in the striking chamber, and when multiple such issues intersect in a single strike, the results can be spectacular, producing coins that are visually stunning, historically significant, and, when only one or two examples exist, valued in the millions. And just as the 1996P quarter captured attention with its wrong planchet, die clash, strong doubling, and extreme rotation, there are other modern quarters whose stories are just as wild. Such as examples from the late 1990s that were struck on experimental planchets, as the Mint prepared for the upcoming 50-state quarters program, with some wrong metal pieces finding their way into regular circulation, and the existence of such anomalies reminds us that every coin, even one that looks perfectly ordinary at first glance, might carry secrets in its weight, sound, or microscopic details, secrets that can transform it from pocket change into a museum-worthy artifact. And this is where the philosophy of collecting intersects with the thrill of treasure hunting, because serious collectors know that while the odds are long, the potential reward, both in terms of financial gain and the sheer joy of discovery, is immense. And that's why the stories of these rare multi-million-dollar quarters are so compelling. They aren't just about the coins themselves, they're about the people who find them, the journeys those coins take from the mint floor to a collector's showcase, the auctions where bidding wars play out in tense increments, And this shared all that ripples through the numismatic community whenever a new record is set. So whether it's the $4 million 1979 with its cascade of errors, the $3.5 million 1987D with its foreign planchet and dramatic misalignments, or the $3 million 1996P with its die clash and upside-down reverse, each of these coins embodies the perfect storm of rarity, visual impact, and provenance that fuels the uppermost tier of the coin market, and each reinforces the timeless advice that if you truly want to understand value in numismatics, you must train yourself to notice the smallest deviations from the norm, because sometimes those tiny deviations are worth millions. And then we arrive at yet another stunning example in this ongoing saga of seemingly ordinary Washington quarters turning out to be once-in-a-generation rarities, the remarkable case of the 1990p Washington quarter dollar, a coin that under the right combination of rarity, condition, and sheer numismatic intrigue has commanded values reaching as high as $2 million in private sales. And just like with the earlier multimillion-dollar examples, the magic here lies not in the coin's age, or in any precious metal content, it's still a standard copper-nickel clad quarter, but in a combination of striking errors so unusual and so perfectly preserved that it stands apart from anything else produced in that massive 1990 mintage, which saw over 900 million quarters struck at the Philadelphia Mint, making the odds of a unique, catastrophic era coin escaping into the wild incredibly slim. Yet somehow this particular piece not only made it past quality control but also survived in pristine mint state condition long enough to be discovered by an astute collector, and when examined under magnification, the anomalies are breathtaking, starting with the planchet, which is believed to have been intended for a US dime but somehow bypassed size and weight sorting to end up in a quarter striking press, meaning it's slightly smaller in diameter and lighter than a standard quarter, yet still carries the full Washington quarter design, albeit compressed and distorted due to the undersized blank. Then there's the strike itself, which is dramatically off-center by about 25%, cutting deeply into the rim and leaving part of the design missing altogether. And when you look closely at the date, 1990, and the P min mark, there's clear evidence of strong doubling, particularly in the digits and in the letters of Liberty, creating that coveted double die obverse effect that is both visually striking and numismatically significant, and the reverse adds yet another layer of rarity with a partial brockage, where the design shows a faint mirrored impression of the obverse due to a previously struck coin adhering to the die, resulting in ghostly features of Washington's profile embedded into the eagle's wings and tail, making for a surreal and unmistakably unique appearance. And to top it off, the coin displays a partial missing clad layer on the obverse, revealing the reddish copper core beneath in a large irregular patch that adds both visual drama and metallurgical curiosity to the piece. So here we have a wrong planchet strike, severe off-center error, double die obverse, partial brockage reverse, and missing clad layer, all on a single quarter, and the odds of that combination occurring and then surviving without being destroyed or heavily circulated are astronomically low, which is exactly why it's been able to command such a staggering price. And when this coin first surfaced in the numismatic community, it caused a ripple of excitement, quickly escalating into a frenzy of speculation and private offers as word spread through coin shows, collector forums, and high-end dealer networks. And by the time it changed hands in a high-profile private sale, it had already cemented its reputation as one of the most remarkable modern-era coins ever documented from the Philadelphia Mint. And the story serves yet again as a reminder that even in an era of advanced quality control, the complexity of the minting process leaves room, just barely, for once-in-a-lifetime errors to slip through, and when they do, and when they're as dramatic as this 1990p, they become treasures not just of metal and design but of history, skill, luck, and human fascination, inspiring yet another generation of collectors to keep looking closely at every coin they touch, because you truly never know when you might be holding something worth millions. And as our journey through these jaw-dropping examples of Washington quarters that have defied all expectations continues, it becomes clear that the phenomenon of extraordinary value in modern coinage isn't just about freak accidents at the mint. It's about the almost magical intersection of rarity, condition, collector demand, and the kinds of stories that ignite people's imaginations. And the next chapter in this saga serves as yet another testament to the fact that even in the late 20th century, when the U.S. Mint was operating with some of the most precise and efficient equipment in its history, the potential for once-in-a-lifetime minting errors never completely disappeared, because for all the automation, for all the strict inspection protocols, the process still involves mechanical systems, human oversight, and the unpredictable variables of physics and metal. And when those variables align in just the wrong way, you get something that can transcend its humble 25-cent denomination to become a multimillion-dollar artifact, a situation that numismatists sometimes refer to as the perfect storm of coin production. And it's fascinating to realize that many of these coins we've been discussing, the $4 million 1979, the $3.5 million 1987D, the $3 million 1996P, and the $2 million 1990P, did not come to light immediately after they were minted, but often years later, when someone finally took the time to examine them closely, which underscores one of the most enduring truths in collecting: that value can hide in plain sight, and the ability to recognize it is what separates those who strike gold from those who unknowingly spend it. And if you think about the odds, it's staggering. Billions of coins are produced each year, the vast majority perfectly ordinary, and yet out of all that output, a handful manage to combine multiple major errors in a single specimen, escape the mint, survive the rigors of circulation unscathed, and then fall into the hands of someone who understands their significance. And once they're recognized, the market dynamics take over, because there's a finite supply, often a single known example, and a potentially infinite pool of people who might desire it, especially among elite collectors who want something no one else on Earth can own. And this is where prices reach into the millions. Not because the metal is precious, but because the coin itself is irreplaceable, a tangible and singular piece of history. And as these sales are reported and retold, they create a kind of folklore in the numismatic world, where each coin becomes more than just a struck piece of metal. It becomes a legend, its story passed from collector to collector, appearing in auction catalogs, featured in online videos, whispered about at coin shows, and immortalized in specialist literature. And that in turn drives even more people to search their pocket change, more dealers to examine bulk lots with extra care, and more collectors to dream of making the next big discovery. Because if these coins teach us anything, it's that the minting process, for all its modern precision, is still an intricate dance of machinery, timing, and human oversight, and in that dance, there is always the faintest chance for a misstep so extraordinary that it creates a treasure, a chance so small it's almost impossible to quantify. Yet just enough to keep hope alive for everyone who has ever stared at the coins in their hand and wondered if maybe, just maybe, they're holding something that could change their life. And now we come to one of the most recent and talked about examples in the ever-growing list of Washington quarters that have crossed over from everyday change into the realm of headline-making collectibles, the astonishing case of the 2021 Washington quarter dollar, a coin that in one known instance has been valued at an eye-popping $1 million due to a combination of dramatic minting errors, perfect preservation, and the heightened attention of collectors in the modern era of social media and instant global communication, because unlike older rarities that might have taken years or decades to be discovered and recognized, this particular specimen exploded into public awareness almost immediately after it was found, and the speed with which its legend spread is as much a part of its story as the errors themselves. So let's start with what makes this coin so unusual. The 2021 quarters were part of the final stretch of the America the Beautiful series and featured the Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Site design on the reverse, and at the Denver Mint, where this piece originated, production was fast-paced and massive, yet somehow, amidst millions of perfectly struck coins, one planchet not intended for this issue, likely a leftover from a foreign contract or another U.S. denomination, made its way into the presses. Slightly thicker and with a marginally different metallic composition, which would already make it an intriguing wrong planchet error. But then came the strike itself, and here's where things get astonishing. The obverse die with Washington's bust was noticeably misaligned, producing a heavy off-center strike that pushed the portrait deep toward the rim, cutting into the "In God We Trust" motto, and leaving part of the date 2021 hanging precariously near the coin's edge, and at the same time, the mint mark, D, is not only doubled but tilted, creating an easily visible double die mint mark that makes seasoned era coin collectors stop in their tracks. Now flip the coin over and you see that the reverse image of the Tuskegee Airman is dramatically rotated relative to the obverse, nearly 180 degrees in this case, so that when you flip the coin vertically, the reverse appears completely upside down, an extreme rotational error that is both rare and visually striking. And as if that weren't enough, there is also evidence of a die clash, where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet between them at some point, leaving ghostly elements of Washington's profile faintly visible behind the central design of the reverse, all of which makes for an almost impossibly rare combination of errors in a single coin, and because it was discovered so quickly after release, the coin retained a perfect, uncirculated finish, with full luster and no contact marks, the kind of pristine condition that collectors dream of. So when word of the find hit online numismatic communities, the reaction was immediate and electric, with photos shared across forums, Instagram accounts, and YouTube channels, and within weeks the coin was being courted by high-end dealers and private collectors, ultimately culminating in a sale that reached the $1 million mark, a figure driven as much by its unique nature and fresh-to-market appeal as by the sheer novelty of such a dramatic modern mint error. And while skeptics might point out that modern coins generally have a harder time reaching such astronomical valuations compared to older issues, this case proves that when you combine uniqueness, condition, dramatic visual appeal, and a captivated global audience, even a coin minted just a couple of years ago can achieve legendary status almost overnight, and it stands as yet another reminder that the world of rare coins is not bound strictly by age, but by the incredible, unpredictable, and sometimes miraculous things that can happen in the minting process, leaving just enough mystery in every new release to keep collectors looking closely, searching patiently, and hoping that their next handful of change might contain the next $1 million discovery. And the tale of these remarkable quarters doesn't end there, because as much as the stories of the 1979, 1987D, 1990P, 1996P, and 2021D examples feel like isolated lightning strikes in the vast landscape of U.S. coinage, they are also interconnected threads in a much larger tapestry of numismatic history. A history defined by the unpredictable intersection of human craftsmanship, mechanical precision, and those rare, unrepeatable moments when something goes wrong in exactly the right way to create an object of fascination and immense value. And what keeps these stories alive is not just the numbers attached to them, 4 million, 3.5 million, 3 million, 2 million, 1 million, but the fact that each of these coins is a singular survivor, a physical record of an event that happened in a fraction of a second inside a mint press, yet somehow managed to defy all the processes designed to prevent it from ever leaving the building, and that survival, coupled with eventual recognition by the collecting community, transforms what could have been scrap metal into a cultural artifact, the kind of item that auctioneers present with dramatic flair and bidders chase with a passion bordering on obsession. And if we zoom out from the individual coins to the bigger picture, it's clear that these spectacular rarities serve another function too. They fuel the public's imagination. They keep the idea of treasure hunting alive in an increasingly digital, automated world, because no matter how much technology advances, the minting process still involves physical metal, moving machinery, and the possibility of human error, and that means the door will never fully close on the chance of new discoveries, even in the most recent issues. And for every multimillion-dollar coin that's been found, there could be others out there, tucked away in bank rolls, forgotten in change jars, sitting unrecognized in someone's dresser drawer, and that possibility is what drives collectors to keep looking, to keep learning about die varieties, strike types, planchet compositions, and minting quirks, because the more you know, the better your chances of spotting the next legend before anyone else does. And as these coins pass into history, they take on lives of their own, becoming part of numismatic lore, inspiring not just collectors but also casual hobbyists, historians, and even people who had never thought about coin collecting before. proving that sometimes the most extraordinary things can be hiding in the most ordinary places, and that's the enduring magic of stories like these. And now we come to one of the most recent shockwaves in the numismatic world, the case of the 2023's Washington quarter dollar that, in one extraordinary documented example, achieved a market value of $1 million due to a confluence of minting errors, scarcity, and collector frenzy that was amplified by the fact that it originated from the San Francisco Mint, which is primarily known for producing proof coins of exceptional quality rather than circulating strikes, meaning that for an error of this magnitude to emerge from such a facility is exceedingly rare, and this particular coin began its life intended as a proof issue for collectors, struck on a specially polished planchet with dies that were meticulously prepared to deliver sharp, mirror-like surfaces and frosted devices, yet somehow, before it could become the flawless proof it was meant to be, it was struck on the wrong planchet altogether. Likely one intended for a foreign coin or even a US dollar-sized blank that had been improperly reduced, resulting in an ever so slight size and weight deviation from the standard quarter, and then the first strike itself was heavily misaligned, producing a dramatic off-center obverse where Washington's bust is pushed deep toward the rim, slicing through "In God We Trust" and leaving part of the date 2023 hanging in open space. The S mint mark itself doubled in such a way that the doubling is crisp and immediately visible, a phenomenon almost unheard of for modern proof dies, and on the reverse, featuring one of the American Women Quarters designs for that year, the central motif is rotated nearly 170 degrees relative to the obverse, creating the kind of extreme rotational error that makes collectors' jaws drop, and as if fate decided to double down, the coin also exhibits a partial missing clad layer on the obverse, revealing a coppery core beneath the mirrored fields, a contrast so visually striking that it almost seems intentional, and yet it is purely the result of a metallurgical mishap. The fact that this occurred on a San Francisco mint-proof coin is almost inconceivable given the rigorous inspection such coins undergo, which is why many experts believe this piece may have slipped out not through standard proof set distribution but as the result of a handling or packaging anomaly, perhaps ending up in a bulk lot by mistake and eventually entering the hands of someone who recognized its significance. And once images of the coin surfaced in online collector communities, the reaction was explosive, with debates raging over whether it might be a fabrication or a genuine mint blunder, until it was authenticated by top-tier grading services and assigned not only a perfect numerical grade but also multiple major error attributions, and from that moment its fate was sealed, entering the upper echelon of modern US error coins. When it came to market in a high-profile private sale, the competition was intense, with multiple deep-pocketed collectors vying for ownership, ultimately driving the price to the $1 million mark. And in many ways this coin story captures the essence of why even the most recent mintages should never be dismissed by collectors. Because here we have a coin barely a year old, yet already carrying a price tag more often associated with centuries-old rarities, proving beyond doubt that in the intricate, fallible, and sometimes unpredictable world of minting, treasures can emerge at any time, from any mint, and the San Francisco 2023's quarter stands as living proof that even in an era of cutting-edge technology and precision quality control, the tiniest slip can produce a masterpiece of rarity, desirability, and astonishing value. And with the saga of the 2023's $1 million quarter fresh in mind, it's impossible not to step back and see how all these stories, from the $4 million 1979 rarity to the latest proof mint blunder, form a chain of evidence that in coin collecting, history is always in motion, and opportunities for discovery never truly vanish, because every time a new mintage rolls out of the presses, whether from Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, the same unpredictable alchemy of machinery, metal, timing, and human oversight plays out, and while in the vast majority of cases the result is a flawless, standard coin destined for wallets and cash registers, in the tiniest fraction of cases the result is something extraordinary, a piece that doesn't just carry a denomination but a story, a mystery, and a value so disproportionate to its face that it borders on the surreal. And what unites all these legendary quarters is that they are more than just errors, they are survivors, each one having slipped past multiple levels of inspection, each one having found its way into a place where someone with the right knowledge and the right eye could recognize it for what it was, and from there, they take on lives of their own, passing from one owner to another, appearing at auction houses where the tension in the room is almost palpable, making headlines that inspire everyday people to dump out their change jars and peer closely at the dates, mint marks, and edges, because maybe, just maybe, lightning could strike again. And the beauty of this pursuit is that no one, not even the most seasoned numismatist, can predict exactly when or where the next record-breaking coin will surface. For all the study and science involved in minting, there remains an element of chance that refuses to be tamed, and that unpredictability is what fuels the collector's passion, because beyond the luster, the grade, and the slab label, these coins carry a sense of wonder, a tangible reminder that sometimes the most valuable treasures are hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right hands to uncover them.